Finally released our 719 boot, and this has been something that has been in the works for over a year now. And I'm very excited today to give you my 6-month review on my personal pair and how we got to this boot that is in front of us today. For those of you new to our brand, is a collaboration between Jim Green Footwear and Murawski. Now Cole and Jim Green go so far back that at one stage we didn't even have a single pair of boots in the USA, yet alone in various other countries around the world. So this boot is something that's been close to my heart, a project that Cole and I have been working on, and we cannot wait to take you through what this boot is about and how we got to it. So I'm going to take you back to the very first day Cole and I chatted. It was the end of July 2019, and Cole slid into our DMs commenting on a boot of ours which we call the 4x4. Now funny enough, we don't actually sell this boot outside of Southern Africa, but he made a comment on the tire tread, which is a replica of a tire retread that we use on the boots here. And what he had to say was that is one hell of a boot, and my following message went, we don't call it the 4x4 sole for nothing. Thanks for the shout out. If you need to know any more information, please let us know. And on a side note, we are looking at getting onto Amazon.com by the start of next year. So keep an eye out for us. We do ship internationally, and you'll have to wait 14 delivery days if you would like a pair. And that is how our conversation started with Cole just over 5 years ago. So obviously at the time, we had absolutely no boots available in the USA, and Cole himself only had about 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. And that is how our friendship started, and now how we have this boot in front of us. So the name 719 obviously refers to July 2019. When Cole and I were chatting, what is the best name to call this boot? We were throwing all kinds of African names and ideas around. And I said to Cole, let's call it something a little bit more personal, something that those who know, and something that when we look back on it, we'll know exactly how this boot came about. Whereas in who knows how long we're going to be selling this style for. You know, to them it's just going to be the 719, but to those who have been following our journey from the beginning, they will know that this idea and Jim Green and Cole came together in July 2019. So we're going to start by going through the boot and how we got to what's in front of us. And the next half of the video, I'm just going to give you my personal review and feedback on how I found my pair that I wore throughout the Southern African winter. So how we got to this pair is I happened to be passing through America in 2023, and I said to Cole, I want to make a plan to come say how's it and have a beer with you. And so we did. And while we were sitting there, we were chatting on the Jim Green direction, how we come to our styling. And at the time, we briefly mentioned doing some kind of a collaboration together. And I said to Cole, you know, if you were a Jim Green boot, what would it be and what don't we have in our range? And we looked at each other and we immediately were thinking a good old traditional service boot. Many of you, when you first saw this boot, you're probably thinking this isn't exactly a Jim Green handwriting, it's something more familiar in the market, and that is exactly the reason why we came out with this boot. It's something that we probably wouldn't have offered in our range, but after chatting with Cole and he was excited to promote a service boot with a 360-degree stitch down construction, add some of his design tips, add some leather recommendations, and we are very proud to have the two boots that are on offer today. While having our beers and some pizza, I said to Cole, I said, you know what, Cole, if you were a Jim Green boot of any kind, you would be our service boot. So now let's go through the specs of this boot and just what makes it so great. So to start, we have airmailed in a limited amount of pairs just so that you guys can have them before the end of the year. The offering that we have come out with is a one-of-a-kind Veg Re-tan Rust. Now Cole and I chatted about this over and over again, and we really wanted to bring out that slightly orange reddish tone to a premium leather, and this is our Veg Re-tan. Now you can see that one of the traits of Veg Re-tan is how well it embosses, and you can see that quite clearly here with the little Jim Green touch on the heel counter. Now Cole and I chatted about branding of this boot and what we wanted to do, and he was adamant that he wanted a Jim Green frog on the heel. So thank you, Cole, for the support of the brand and wanting to include this into the boot. Now with time and wear, this will obviously naturally blend into the boot, and just that little special touch when you're walking about. So this is the Rust Veg Re-tan Leather. And then on my other side here, we have a leather that some of you are already familiar with that we brought out a couple months ago, and that is our Bronco Brown. Now Bronco Brown was something I suggested to Carl. I said to him, listen, we're coming out with this new leather, and I think this boot is going to look hell of a good in this Bronco Brown. This is what I wanted. This is the boot that I wanted to wear, and I really like that look, if you want to call it, that old brown dog, where it looks like this dog's been around for a long time. He still looks good, he still looks strong, but he's seen many things in his life. And that is exactly the look that I wanted to get from this boot, and I think it's exactly what we've achieved after a couple months of wear. Now these are dusty, I haven't cleaned them, I've worn them quite a bit, so maybe we'll do later on a little video where we give these a polish and restore them to try and get some of the oils to come back through again. One of the specs Carl and I chatted on quite a bit was the eyelet configuration. Now we were in between going all eyelets for that sleeker look, or just to add the 2 speed hooks on the top for convenience. At the end of the day, we want you guys to enjoy these boots and love putting them on, and those 2 speed hooks at the top just go that extra distance and save you those couple of seconds when lacing the boots up. And it's something that I really enjoyed while traveling, being on the run, slipping them on and off. The 2 speed hooks have been a great addition in my eyes. Next up, and something that differentiates this boot quite a bit from the Numzam boot. So our Numzam boot is what many of you could relate this boot to, where there are 2 major differences. Obviously, number 1, and very clearly, is the complete change in upper design. Numzam is more of the traditional gym green, unique looking boot, whereas this is the good old service looking boot. Now the Numzam boot has a built-in quilty. Now that is a piece of leather over the tongue to protect it. Now that just makes the boot really rugged and a bit harder to break in. So what we've done with the 719 is we've removed that built-in quilty, and it just softens the boot a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to break in, and then just as you can see here, laces up really nicely and gives a really good fit. So that is one of the differences other than the upper design that we have implemented on the 719. Next up is the upper pattern. Now we went back and forward many times with this. We changed heel counters. I think Carl has a couple of the original samples with him, he might include in his video. But what we wanted to achieve here is just that good old traditional service boot look. Nothing outrageous, nothing that people are going to stop and say, look at how that pattern's turned out. This is just your all day, everyday boot that's going to do the job for you. Now we finished it off with a nice rolled collar. We didn't want to add too much bend in the quarters here, and I think this boot all comes together with a nice snug fit, and once broken in you can see it hugs quite nicely around those ankles. So something you can't see from the outside is what have we put inside this boot. So the boot is double lasted. So we've got our traditional yellow calfskin lining that is wrapped around and tucked underneath the last. We've then obviously got the 2 leather options as the upper, and we have gone with a genuine toe cap. So there is a lot of leather around your toe. You've got the calfskin lining and then 2 layers of either the Bronco or Veg or Re-tan on the top, making it over 5 millimeters of leather around your toe. The upper is then finished off with a triple stitch. So now the fit, we have gone with our ASH-M last. Now this last is of an almond shape. It gives it a little bit more of a dressier look to it, but it still offers that extra width that some of you might be wanting. Now as you can see from our pair, once it breaks in, it looks really good, and it just has that slightly pointed raised toe that enables it to be worn in the office, yet alone in the outdoors as well. So now to the midsole of the boot and what you are standing on. So the upper and the midsole is brought together with a 360-degree stitch down construction. I'm not sure how many service boots out there are using this 360-degree stitch down construction, so this is what sets us apart from many of the other boots out there. A stitch down construction is also a very easy resole, and I've even seen some of you guys on Reddit doing it yourself at home. Now what is your foot standing on? We have gone with a leather lasting board and a leather midsole with our resin runner. So that means you're standing on a lot of veg tan leather, and with time and wear, this boot's going to break in really nicely and take to your foot. Now, using so much leather, it does make one little negative to this boot is that it is slightly on the heavier side. But it's very hard to get a trade-off between how heavy and the quality of boot. And knowing Cole Murawski, there's no ways he would settle for anything less other than a full leather midsole. The boot then also has a steel shank, so if you're climbing on ladders or needing that extra bit of support, there's a shank in here. I also wouldn't go for a heel sole without a shank, because when you're walking, your foot actually sinks down into it. Now the boot is all brought together with one of our more recent soles we've released, and that is our frog grip sole. Now this sole adds a bit of fashion to it. It is really grippy and it is really, really comfortable. It is made from the same compound that we use on our Oringo sole. So many of you that are familiar with the African Ranger will know how nice and squishy the sole really is, while at the same time lasting you a long time. Now this boot is obviously designed for just everyday walking and in the office, so you're going to get quite a bit of use out of this boot, and I've even seen it being used on more rugged terrains for light hikes. So that covers all the specs of the boot, and when we bring it all together, you have one really good looking boot, and I think the two leather options that we've originally come out in give you guys a great selection. You can go for that old brown dog look, or you can polish something up and look nice and fancy and formal in our Rust Veg Re-tan Leather. I'm always going to be swaying more towards the old brown dog look, and that's just who I am. It'll be interesting to see what Cole's thoughts are, but I know just from chatting with him, he's more of the Rust Veg Re-tan. So now onto my review of my experience with the 719 boot. Obviously I went for the Bronco, and what I wanted was a boot that I could pair with pretty much anything. I actually got this idea when walking through an airport, and I saw a guy traveling, and he had this very similar looking leather to this. And I wanted to put this together because you can almost pair this with anything, from a light pair of chino shorts to a dark pair of jeans. This Bronco Brown can go with anything. Now, when we were developing our Bronco Brown leather with the tannery, I'm actually surprised how nicely this leather came out. We wanted something with plenty of oils in it that's going to patina with time, and I think we have really achieved something. I mean, if you just look at this here, you can see how many oils are actually just moving around in this boot. And when you look back at what my boot originally looked like on day one, you can just see how those oils have moved about. And I can guarantee you, once I give this boot a brush down and give it a bit of a clean up and treat it, it's going to bring those oils right back to the surface again. I mean, even now you can still see when I'm playing around with the leather, there's plenty patina, and I've only worn this boot for a couple of months. So there's still plenty of wear and tear that's going to be brought out on this boot. Now I have worn this boot in all conditions, the American summer, the South African winter, and one of the best things is how confident you feel in this boot. Yes, it is a little bit on the heavier side, but being a double lasted boot, 360-degree stitched on with all this leather, you can walk through puddles, go into some rain, and your feet are going to stay dry. Now this boot isn't advertised as waterproof, but rather water resistant. And if you treat it with a leather balm or a beeswax, you are going to keep some water out. But being the 360-degree stitch down, there is a chance that a little bit of water can get in the odd crack. But for me, I haven't had any issues. Light puddles, rain, walking through grass, and with the right treatment, you know, your feet are going to stay dry for a good couple of hours. I've seen many people using our double lasted boots in snowy, wet conditions with no issues. So it really just comes down to how you treat them. So to summarize this video, I've often thought in my head, what is the only 5 pairs of gym greens that I'll wear forever? And this boot is definitely going to be one of them that stays in my range forever and ever. I'm obviously wear testing new boots almost weekly, new variations, leathers, styles. And the only thing I regret is not being able to wear this boot a bit more and give it a little bit more patina. So I'm very excited to see how you guys wear your 719 boots. So thanks again for watching. Thanks again for the support of Gym Green Boots. We have actually airmailed in the first batch of these just to make sure you guys get it before the end of the year. So in the comment section below, let us know your thoughts on this boot, how we've brought it together. And once you get it on your feet, that's when we really love to see the pictures and feedback.